All right, welcome everyone. Today we'll be going over the master scheduler that's part of the QuickSchools, one of the QuickSchools modules. We'll be going over basically all the steps. It's primarily a 6-step process. We start with an enrollment period, which you use to build your schedule, and then you finalize the schedule at the end of the process. And then that moves over all the contents within the enrollment period, basically your courses, your enrollments into the academic term. So the steps are basically you set up the courses and teachers. There's some course requests to go over. You can set up some constraints. And then the main bulk of the process is through scheduling the sections and then loading the students, basically assigning students to sections before finally copying all the sections and enrollments into the master scheduler. Right? So we'll start with district settings. So this is basically an area where the information has changed from term to term. It's your master list of courses and departments. So I'll show you what that screen looks like. So this is the master scheduler screen. There's an area here called district settings. And this is where you can set up all the different components linked to the master scheduler. So you have your list of departments. You can set up your rooms. We have a feature called pathways, which is really still under development. And then we have your course catalog, starting with subject areas. So you can create as many subject areas as you want. These get linked to the credit summary and with your transcripts if you want to set up the number of credits required for each subject area. So it's a very useful feature. And then lastly, you have your list of courses. Right? So courses can be linked to a department, can be linked to a subject area. There's a high grade, low grade. You have section limits, credits, and so on. Okay. So just to review, you'll need to add all departments and courses before you can start using the master scheduler. Rooms and subject areas are optional. Courses can actually be imported from an Excel spreadsheet. And as I mentioned, the pathways are still under development. So the next thing you want to look at is the enrollment periods. You can have as many enrollment periods as you want, but only one can be designated as the active enrollment period and one as the next enrollment period. We'll go over these in more detail. So if I go back to the enrollment period screen, enrollment period screen right here under master scheduler, you can see we have 2 enrollment periods right here. You can create as many enrollment periods you want. When you click on enrollment period, there's the status on the right-hand side. And we'll go over each one of these in more detail. The first of which is this section here called Configure Enrollment Period. So in the master scheduler, basically master schedulers are linked to an enrollment period. You have to create an enrollment period. And then each enrollment period can be linked to academic terms. So we'll show that in the next screen. But basically, there are multiple ways for you to handle master scheduler. You could have one enrollment period for the whole year, or you could have one enrollment period for each term, one for the fall, one for the spring, depending on how you want to handle your schedule. So within the configure enrollment period screen, this is where you set up which semesters are linked to the enrollment period. You can set up a bell schedule. So you usually need a master bell schedule where you can assign courses to periods. And then you also can set up alternate bell schedules if you have changes in the schedule from day to day. Then once you're done through all the steps, you can actually print the bell schedule for each student once they've been copied over to their to the academic term. So let's go back to that screen. So this is the configure enrollment period area. So you can link semesters to each enrollment period. You can configure a bell schedule. So here's an example of a bell schedule. You can drag and drop these into an order. Make sure you designate period numbers starting with 0, and then you can designate the start and end times for each period. This one here has only one day, but you could have, an A day and a B day, or a Monday through Friday, as many of these as you want. But this is basically your master schedule. You should only have one course. Each course would be assigned to one period within this master scheduler. And then there's an area here for the alternate bell schedule, where you can set up different schedules for different days of the week. So here I've set up one bell schedule which applies to every day of the week, but you could have a day 2, a day 3, or day A, a day B, and then assign that particular bell schedule for that particular day of the week. Or you could also set it on a per day basis. So for example, you could have regular periods throughout the year, but then on the last week of the school term, you may have an exam week and they have different schedules. You can apply that schedule accordingly. Right, so that's the bell schedule. Let's go back to this main list. Okay, the next screen is enrollment period status. So there are two main statuses to look for. One is active, one is next enrollment period. So if we go back to our screen, if you notice here, there's this choose schedules. I can just create another schedule here just for illustration. New period. So this one starts off as inactive. And then the status is here where you can activate the enrollment period, or you can set the enrollment period as the next enrollment period. So what are the two differences? Basically, when your term is active, this is what students will see when they go to their schedule. And you go to the schedule tab, this shows you the current schedule. Likewise, if you go to courses and sections, this is also typically defaults to the active schedule. Although you could select a previous enrollment period as well. Okay, so this is the active term, active enrollment period. So for the next enrollment period, this is what's used for the courses and sections. So I'm going to actually change this one because the test account doesn't actually have any data in it. I'm going to set this as the next enrollment period. So this is both active and next enrollment. So what happens here now, if I go to the student record and I go to course requests, this information here is based on the next enrollment period. So typically how it works is you may have the fall active and the spring as the next enrollment period. So people are actively working on the fall term, but because spring hasn't started yet, you can collect course requests for the spring. And vice versa, you may be in the spring semester and you have the spring semester active. You may set the following fall term as the next enrollment period. So you can start collecting course requests for the fall term. So just to review, yep, you've got the two statuses, active and next enrollment period. You can have as many enrollment periods as you want. Typically, you only have one enrollment period that's active and one that's the next enrollment period. Then there's this area called course requests. This is for you to allow students to submit course requests from their portal. So I'll show you this real quick. Let's go back to the master scheduler. So usually it starts off this way where if it's set up as a next enrollment period, you'll see a session called course requests. It starts off as inactive. You can activate the session, which then allows students to submit the course requests. If you click deactivate session, it's basically just turning it off so they can no longer do that. It disappears from the screen. There is an option to lock the session. So when you lock the session, students can see what they've submitted, but they can no longer make any new submissions. It's, once the time has passed. But if you decide that you want to reopen a locked session, there is the option to unlock the session as well. That's pretty much how this screen handles submission of course requests from students. And we'll go over in more detail how you can set up course requests for students to submit on their portal. So one thing to mention here is this thing called next grade. So course requests are typically for a future term. So if you're in ninth grade in the spring, and then you want to do course requests for the following fall, the student is going to be in 10th grade usually, right? So this needs to be set up in your master scheduler. Otherwise, the students won't be able to submit course requests at the appropriate grade level. So just to recap here, right? Usually when you create a new academic term, it starts off empty. So there are no grade levels, students aren't assigned a grade level yet. But you want to be able to process cross requests without necessarily going through the whole step of activating the new term. So we have to assign a next grade. So we can actually do this automatically from the master scheduler. So here on the master scheduler, there's this button called Auto Set Next Year Level. So you can click this. It'll automatically assign students a grade level. But later on, when you open up the student record, you can change the grade level, the next grade for the student. So here under course requests, here's the next grade, and you can change this if it's incorrect. Just thing to note here, this one's called year level, but this label can be changed if you're if you're a regular K-12 school, it'll say next grade as opposed to next year level. Really depends on your settings. So let's go back. All right, that's next grade. All right, so now we can move into the gist of the whole process. We have 6 steps, and the first step is basically to configure your courses, your teachers, and your course offering. So just to review the screen, let's go back to the main screen here. So if I go back to the main screen here, you'll see that we have 6 steps. So after you initially configure your enrollment period and the statuses, you've got your 6 steps: configure courses and teachers, make course requests, input constraints, schedule, load students, and finalize schedule. So as long as you go through these steps in sequence, it should be fine. It should be pretty straightforward. So the first part is really configuring your courses and teachers. So you can add courses, assign courses to teachers, assign courses to rooms. You can set a limit. This is used for the student portal if you want to limit the amount of requests that students can submit for a particular course, especially if you have limited sections. Okay. You can configure your teachers that are teaching in this course, in this term. You can assign a department. So this helps with the organization of the schedule board, because you can actually organize teachers by department. That way it's easy for you to assign sections to periods. We have course offering, right? So if you remember from district settings, you can set up all your courses, but you don't necessarily offer all those courses on a term-by-term basis. So you decide here which courses you want to offer for that particular enrollment period. Okay, and then you can set up the limits for each section. All right, and then finally here we have course request templates. So this is where you can set up for each grade level, let's say 10th grade, you can set up groups, and for each group you can set up rules. Like, do you want them to select courses by a preset selection of courses, by subject area, by department? So in this case, we've set up a rule for courses. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 courses selected. The minimum number of course requests is 2, maximum is 2, alternate is 1. So they have to actually select 2 of the 7 here, so 9, and they can select 1 as an alternative. Right? And you can add as many groups as you want, and then the system automatically calculates what your minimum and maximum are. So you can use the next year levels here if you want to share that this course request template with other grade levels. So we'll log in as a student a little later just to show you how students can make a submission for course requests. So just to recap, you can configure your courses by assigning teachers to courses. This is an optional step actually. You only really need to do this if you want the system to automatically assign courses, sections to courses based on the automated run function. You can also set a limit for course requests. You can set it to 0 if there's no, if you don't want to set a limit. Just a note that the limit is by course. So if you expect 3 sections to be created, then be sure to increase, and if you expect 30 students per section, 3 sections, then you got to set your limit to 90, for example. You can configure your courses, set your rooms and departments, configure your course offering. So important thing to note here is even though you offer the course, the system will only show you the sections available, right? So if the course does not have any course requests, like 0 course requests, then you will not have any sections. So to circumvent that, if you want to create sections manually, there's a way for you to do that in step 2, which I'll show you. And then finally, there's the course request template where you can set up course requests for students to fill in from their portal. Yep. And another pretty useful thing is, when the second term rolls around, we have an import settings function. So you can just copy your settings from previous term, make changes without actually affecting what's been done before. Okay, so next step here, step 2 is course requests. Let's check out the screen. So if I go back to the main screen here, step 2 is make course requests. This is basically the meat of the master scheduler. You want to compile all the course requests. And there are many ways for you to do this. We have this thing called course request by student. Basically, for any particular student, you can create a course request for that student by clicking on the request button. So typically this will be done by a counselor. So the counselor can review what the student has. They can remove a course request, add course request, create alternates, and so on. This screen is also available on the student record if the next enrollment period has been activated. Okay. Next one over is course request by course. So this is where you can increase or decrease the number of sections for each course just by clicking on this button here to increase the number of sections. Then it shows you here how many course requests have been created for that course, and then how many students per section will end up being created based on the number of sections you've defined for that course. Okay, let's do bulk course requests first, right? So this is where you can mass create course requests for students based on a report. So if I click on add new configuration here, I select a report that I've created. This one, I only have one report right now. And then you can select what courses the students in that report would end up taking. So here's an example of a course request configuration that has 6 courses, right? 6 courses. And then if I click create course requests, it'll automatically create course requests for these 6 courses for the students that are in this report. So here's an example. If I click on requested here, you can see the students that have been applied the course requests. I can add additional students if I want manually as well, but you can kind of review where you are. Right, when you create the course requests, there's an option to lock the course requests once they've been created. And then when you then create, if you have them locked, you have the option of unlocking it afterwards. All right. The last thing here is the mass change course requests. So this usually happens when you decide that you don't want to offer a course, but you want people who had asked for that course to take the other course that you're offering. So maybe you had an Algebra 1 course which you are not going to be offering anymore. But so you're going to them take a modern math course or some other kind of math course. So you could basically um, select the course, see the students, find a course that you want them to be moved to, and then just bulk move them from one course to another course. All right. Okay, so course requests, I should mention here that there is a function to import course requests from a template. So this is particularly useful if you have another SIS that's already collected your course requests. So you can bypass step 2 and just import all your course requests into QuickSchools. But without that function, if you want to collect your course requests in QuickSchools, then you use the functions that are available. You've got your course request by student, which we mentioned, where you can manually add requests for each student. There's a course request by course where you can adjust the number of sections you want to create for each course. Then there's the mass change course request where, if you decide not to offer one course, you can move all the requests from one course to another course. And then lastly here, there's bulk course requests where you can mass assign course requests to students based on a report. So the one thing that we didn't really mention here is the student course requests. So let's log in as a student to kind of show you how that looks like. So here's an example of the course request screen available for students. So when the student logs into their portal, you can see the session that's been enabled. You can see the different areas that have been set up. You can, if a student is pre-enrolled, it's already checked, so you can't really uncheck it. That's only controlled by the counselor, and then the student can select which courses they want to take, right? And you'll notice here it shows you the courses that are, the rules behind. So in this case, you've got a minimum of 2, maximum of 5. I can select 3 more, right? Some of them allow for alternates. So if I click it again, it shows up as an alternate. So I can click it 3 times actually. Once to become a course and the second one to be an alternate course. Right. And then I can expand it to see, so some of these courses may have a description. So that needs to be defined in the course catalog, and then you can display the description here. Right. Let's go back to our deck. So the next step here is step 3, where we go over input constraints, as well as this function called distribute courses. Let's just see what that looks like. So here on master scheduler, we go back to input constraints. So you can actually block courses, restrict courses, I guess is the more appropriate word, from being scheduled on certain days. Likewise, for teachers, you can restrict them from happening on certain periods, as well as for departments. So you can restrict departments from, restrict courses from certain departments from being assigned to certain periods. Lastly, there's this thing called distribute courses. So this is if you have a group of courses, typically within the same um, group, I guess, and you don't want them to overlap within your sections. That way, students have the opportunity to take, more courses from that group of courses. So if I do biology, calculus, and chemistry, click add, that's my first group. So now if I use the automatic run function in step 4, it'll automatically make sure that these courses don't get assigned in the same period. Okay, I think that's it for step 3. So just to review, all constraints work the same way. You click on a cell to restrict it. This functionality really is only use with the run function that's in step 4, where the system automatically um, assigns sections to periods. With the if you do it manually, you can drag and drop the course to any cell regardless of the constraint. And then the second part there is to distribute courses. System will distribute the sections evenly between all available periods so that students have the what do you call that opportunity to take multiple courses or multiple sections because they don't all appear in the same period. All right, step 4. Now this is one of the main parts of this is actually the main part of the master scheduling process. This is the culmination of collecting all your course requests and setting up all your constraints. Step 4 is where you actually set up the schedule board and assign sections to teachers on for specific periods. That becomes the backbone of the schedule. So let's just go over the screen. So here under step 4, you click schedule. Okay. Here we have the periods available. This is all based on your bell schedule. Um, it's a pretty simple enough function to use. You can just drag and drop these into any of the available cells. So for example, French, I just dragged it to P4 from Ms. Smith. I can click on it and I can also remove it. Say I don't want that cell to appear there. So on the right-hand side are all your available sections. The numbers on the right-hand side here, that's the number of sections scheduled over the number of number of sections you expect. So here, for example, physical education, there's 2, but you really only need 1. When you mouse over these, you can see it light up on the left side as well. So kind of tries to help you kind of navigate through the available sections. So these are clickable. You can see the number of requests. You can see which teachers have been assigned to it. You can also click on these guys on the left side, shows you pretty much the same information. But once it's assigned to a period, it becomes a section. So you have this additional information that you can set for that particular section. So there are some defaults. Usually you assign a room to a teacher. So if you assign if you assign a section to a teacher, it picks up the room for that teacher. And this is just to override that information. Okay, yeah, so we can drag and drop this stuff. It's, pretty straightforward actually. And the reassign button here is if one of your teacher, let's say, resigns or decided not to teach that year, so you can reassign all sections for that teacher to another teacher. So that just makes it easy for you to just handle that case without having to drag and drop it each individual section. So some things to note on the top left, on the top corner here, there's like your mini toolbar. There's this run function. So this is what automatically assigns these sections into the periods. So if I can clear, so there's nothing there right now. And if I click run, it just picks up all the assigned sections to courses based on the rules and constraints that you've set up. So as long as you have this constraint set up, it should pick it up. And then you can make your own minor adjustments, by dragging and dropping stuff across from the right to the left and vice versa. Oops, let's just delete this actually. All right. We have tooltips here, just gonna help you understand what each one does. Reload info. Right, so if you make changes to your course catalog, you can just reload the information from the back end. Okay, so basically this cleanup function, when you're moving between step 4 and step 5, if you assign a student to a section based on the course request, and then you remove the course request, the system actually still remembers that the student was linked to that section. So this button here will clear the information so that the student is no longer assigned to the section. It gets dropped automatically, basically, if the course request was removed for that student. All right, we have this save point. So whenever you save, you can create a save point. So this is one of those things where you can kind of branch, move forward. Um, let's just create one right here, my save point A. So now that I have a save point, I can make changes and go back to that save point and see what the courses have been done for that save point. Okay, here we have options. This is just ways to categorize to view your schedule. You can organize by department. You can show the room info. You can also we have a compact mode, so you can kind of see more information on the screen. And then finally, we have some reports here that you can just view the information in an Excel file. Sorry, in a PDF file, I guess. Yep. Here's an example. So this is step 4. Let's review. So in step 4, you can only schedule courses once course requests have been submitted or once you manually add sections. So that area on the right-hand side, if a course doesn't have any course requests and you haven't bumped up the number of sections per course, you won't see it there. So that's something important to note, depending on your approach to handling the number of sections per course. Students get loaded based on the target number assigned to the enrollment period. So if you set the target to be 15 students per section and there's 16 requests, you'll create a second section to accommodate the 16th request, I guess. You can click on a section to set the room number and override the target number of students. And as I mentioned earlier, there's the cleanup function to kind of remove students assigned to a section, but their course request has been removed. So now we go to step 5. This is where you load students to the sections based on the course requests. So let's see what that screen looks like. So I'll close step 4. We go to load students, step 5. Right? So these are all my students. If I click on one of these students, you'll see the course requests that they've made. Here we have 3 course requests, and here are the sections available from step 4. So, I mean, the manual way to do it is just to click this. You can see the courses that I've selected for each period. You can uncheck these. Let's view another one here. You can just click it here. So you'll notice that if I assign 2 courses in the same period, you see the conflict. Likewise here, I'll see a conflict. I can save it or I can leave it. And then these buttons here are for locking. You can lock it so that you can't unassign it again afterwards. This becomes unclickable. So this is the manual way of doing it. And this screen is actually available from the student record. So your counselors can go into the student record and change the actual courses that they're taking. But the key function here that most of our schools want to use is this load students function. So if I click load students, it does the bulk assignment of students to courses based on their course requests. So you'll see here it's 77.59% complete because some of the students aren't able to take some courses because there are conflicts. The load function doesn't actually let you create conflicts. Okay, there's this thing called randomized sections. This is pretty interesting to use. If you, by default, if you don't click on this, students move in cohorts. But if you click on that, then students get randomly assigned to new sections. So there's a mix for each section of a mix of students basically. There's this thing called schedule algorithm. This is pretty neat. You can choose the order in which you want to apply the sections to courses. So block sections are basically this function from step 3, sorry, from step 4. Block course is the function from step 3. Singleton is if you only have a singleton is basically when a course only has one section. Doubleton is when the course only has two sections. So ideally, if a course only has one section, uh, it'll fill up fast. So you want to make sure that people get assigned, or you would assign sections to singletons first, right? We have some tool tips here to help you kind of understand what's going on. And you can also filter. So you could actually run the schedule by grade level. Like you could do all the 12th graders first, then the 9th grader, then the 11th graders, then the 10th graders. That way the older graduating students get first pick. And if sections get filled up, then it's the lower grade levels that will need to find an alternate course to take. All right. So the thing about this process is we're typically moving between step 4 and step 5. So you go to step 5, you see that your percentage is 77.59. You see that there's some conflicts here. You can run some reports to see what's going on with your courses, with your course requests. Then you can go back to step 4, make some adjustments here, go back to step 5, reload, and so on. So there is that process of kind of massaging the schedule to suit your needs and creating save points as you go, so you can kind of compare. If I do this, I get 88%. If I do this, I get 93%. Then I can kind of move between different schedules and figure out what the best combination is in terms of setting up the course requests. So step 5, students are typically loaded by cohort by default, and then you can use the randomize function if you don't want students to be stuck within the same group for all sections that they're enrolled in. Once course assignments are locked, it won't let you change it, so you can freely clear and load sections. And then lastly here, alternates. So although we do allow students to submit alternate course requests, it's actually not handled within the system. If you need to, if a student wants to take an alternate course, basically the counselor or some administrator would need to change the status of that course request to an actual course request as opposed to an alternate. Okay, next screen. Step 6. All right, this is now you've done your schedule. You've massaged it. You're at 98% or something, maybe even 100%. You're ready to kind of move all your information to to the actual academic term. Okay. So back to the master schedule. There's this step 6. I click copy schedule into semester. It'll copy the sections and the section enrollments to the academic term that is linked to the enrollment period. So it's very important to note this is a one-time deal. It will overwrite anything that's already in your courses and sections. It is designed to do just once, and then once you finalize, you would go to the if there if students need to make changes, you'd go to the courses and sections area to make those changes. Any changes you make in the enrollment period doesn't automatically reflect in the main academic term. Right, so just to review here, if you need to make change, you need to change it directly in courses and sections if you're doing it after step 6. And if you do press step 6 again, it overrides all the sections and enrollments that were previously created for that academic term. So after step 6, you should be using courses and sections to make your changes. There is an add date and drop date specified. You can print your schedules from the student record as well. So I'll demonstrate this. So if I go to courses and sections under courses, here are all these courses that have been copied over from step 6. I can click on it to view information about the course. And then I can click on the number here that shows you the number of students. Okay. You can add a new student manually here it sets the add date. If I click on that, there's my court, and I can drop the student, and you apply a drop date. Save. And if you click on history, you can see all the students when they were added and when they were dropped. And if I go to the student record, and I go to the schedule tab of the student record, it shows you the schedule. So there is a date selector here, because if a student drops a course, adds a new course, the schedule actually changes over time. So you can select a date to view what the latest schedule is. And this can be printed in a PDF format. This format is actually customizable depending on your use case. So definitely work with our team to figure out what the best case for you is, what the best template is for you. All right. Teachers get their own schedule as well. They have a little roster here. And you can also print the schedule from the mess, from the courses section. There's a, you go by teacher, you can print the board for the teacher. For all teachers, I should say. All right. Yeah, there's a lot here that you can look at. You can look at the schedule for each student here. You can, so the system, if you click find here, it actually shows you all the sections available for that period. So it's pretty easy to remove, to assign students to a new course for any period that they have available. You can click on an existing one and then find an alternate section for that, and then just unenroll the student from the new course and then move the student to the new course.